that would create an incident with newspapers report it, and again, it's pretty well known that the state of Arizona has a law against that. It's called collusion conspiracy against a public official by other public officials. It's an anti-corruption law, basically, and that happened years ago in Arizona. So I kind of knew that Arizona isn't for this kind of law, kind of management. So what I saw was, I'm going up to the command, I'm seeing the city attorney, and he met with me in January after I met with him. And I told her, I can't even discuss this with you, Mrs. Walker, because you have been assigned 2 positions in the city. You're not only human resource director, you're also the hazard person. You're our hazard assessment person. So that wastewater spill, wasn't that under your control? Wasn't that under your envelope of authority? And wouldn't you be responsible inadvertently by the failure of the staff not to take corrective action? And I said, I shouldn't even be talking with you. This is a conflict of interest. And she said, well, okay, then talk to the city attorney. So I thought, okay, this will be great. This will solve the issue. Here's the city attorney, the top law enforcement officer for the city, should act like a law enforcement official. He's sworn by his position as a lawyer to follow the judicial process. The law should come first to a city attorney, I would think, and most Americans would agree, but unfortunately, the job and the high-paying position in such a small town, in my opinion, was interfering with the city attorney's ability to perform his basic function, was to protect the public. Well, I was called to his office. He asked me to give a full report of things I had discovered. I gave him a verbal report, but he wanted a written report. So I went back to my office, and within a day or two, I believe it was, I had written a report. And I also informed him via that intimidation letter that I knew what they were going to do. I knew they were going to try to fire me. I said that letter was a violation of my federal rights, because I'm a federal water worker technically, and that I already warned them if they continue in this manner that I would file a federal complaint, and this would be in front of a federal judge. That was confirmed that I actually said that at the March 31st, 2010 federal hearing here in Kingman, that they did agree that I did say that. So they had pre-warning, legal pre-warning, that this was going to be in front of a federal judge and a jury, which gives the city the notice, pre-notice they need to get ready for lawsuits or whatever. So they knew. There was no secrecy. Nobody's sneaking up on the city saying this, that, and the other thing. They knew about it ahead of time. This is the problem of collusion. When public officials get together in a small group, like I saw, in my opinion again, the public works director, and he's also acting as city manager. He was supervising himself at that same time, because the city manager at the time had been released. So he was acting in 2 roles. There was no supervision, lack of supervisory control. The human resource director, she had 2 positions. Again, no control, no supervisory control. The other 2 people that were involved were handpicked by the city manager for their positions. For one reason, I'm told by others in the city, was because they would be strictly loyal to the city manager. Their loyalty was not to the community, it was to the management. That's one of the things we don't want to see in a government. We don't want to see loyalty to a people, to a person, when we see loyalty to the community. Unfortunately, in Kingman and a lot of small cities, that's not the case. They are afraid of the manager because he'll terminate you if you don't do anything. So the public safety is at risk. So I went up the ladder, thinking naively that the city attorney would act properly. Well, he took my 7-page report with photographs, and I thought, well, I'll submit it to him, and I'll also have to file my federal complaint, because I only have 30 days. 2 or 3 weeks had passed since the first incident of the write-up, and I knew I only had 30 days to file a federal whistleblower complaint. It's a very limited time. So the city attorney agreed. He says, yeah, you've only got 30 days, you better file that complaint. So I went ahead and filed it. With his full knowledge, there's no sneakiness about it at all. He knew it was filed. Now, I was still employed at the city. No one had fired me. I wasn't even put on probation yet. It was just that warning letter. That was bad enough. Well, I expected some contact from the city attorney to have a meeting with the staff to go over these issues, which I had found and I had documented, and what I had done, and I'll show you a copy of it. This is actually the report I gave him, and the date's wrong because I made a new date on it, but this is the actual, what's called the timeline of key events I gave to the city attorney, and this goes to 7 pages, and on one of the things it shows the law that's violated, or may have been violated, R18-4-113A. That refers to the Arizona revised statutes. I gave that to the attorney so he could reference that law according to the issue that happened at that time. And I also gave about 32 photographs backing up each one of these items. So I gave them a thorough report. That's what shocked them, evidently. That's the surprise that I was so thorough. Well, I attended California Polytechnic University, and I was formally trained in how to do formal reports. So I knew that I should log everything, and as you see, every single one of these has a law related to it. So these are law violations. These are actual clean water federal violations. Very serious matter. I didn't expect anyone to be fired. I just expected maybe to have meetings, maybe transfer people to the Parks Department, to another department, something like that. Just take corrective action. And what happened was, and this book is about 250 pages of emails, photographs, and stuff. And the city just recently found out I have this. I didn't disclose that I have this much data. I didn't disclose this until this last week at the city council meeting, because this is going to be used at a federal thing that I'm doing with. I'm trying to get the Justice Department to enforce the law, but unfortunately, I found out our government, state and federal, is overwhelmed. There's just no staff to do anything. But let's go back to where I was the city attorney. So I reported these violations to the city attorney, and I was naive, of course. And of course, the city attorney, being part of the small clique of people who run the city, decided instead of protecting the public, he protected staff members, the manager, and he knew the top people were at risk of losing their jobs over these serious issues that I had documented. I never heard anything from him. All of a sudden, it just went away. And so I repeatedly asked him in emails, and I have copies of the emails in here, of what's going on, what's public interest. And I made very specific requests, and I cited specific things under the public sector laws that he should have understood, like provide for the general welfare, in the public's interest. I had to state those things in my emails. Now, he didn't like it, because he's a lawyer. He doesn't like to be citing the law by a naive water operator, as it were. But I did have some training in law when I was in college, so I understand the basics. So here was the top law enforcement city official not acting. Why wasn't he acting? It shocked me. I was just like, I didn't know what to do. I went all the way up the ladder. He didn't act. So I'll go up the next chain, which is the city council. I wrote a letter to the city council, and I had letters in here as well. Everything's documented by index, by dates, everything. That was before the Department of Labor investigator came out. The Department of Labor has this whole book. In fact, when the investigator came out, she informed me that I had overwhelmed their office in San Francisco. It scared the heck out of me when they said that, because, I would think the Department of Labor would have staff, but what she was referring to was because I have so much information. And here's a complaint, discrimination statement I had made against the city way back in. I was wondering when the date this was. This was when I was still employed at the city. So I kept every record, not trusting them, and I'm glad I didn't. Well, eventually what happened was, in short order, they called me into a couple of staff meetings, and what staff warned me about, the key staff that was feeding me information originally, they warned me, be careful when you go into these meetings, because they'll set you up. They'll entrap you. That's what they do. They've done this before, evidently. And they'll get a worker upset at the meeting, and then they'll use the meeting, his actions at the meeting, for the actual dismissal or his write-ups or whatever. So they actually call you into a meeting, accuse you of violations of law or whatever. They accuse you of something which you didn't do, but there's no witnesses, and they write you up. But there's no proof of anything happened. It was just hearsay. So I could see what they were doing, so I kept fairly calm, except for one meeting when they called me in. The city attorney, HR director, city manager Jack Kramer, and George Sewage, the water superintendent, called me into a meeting, and they all sat there and they had a tape recorder going. And to my astonishment, they taped me. Well, I expected them to tape me, but to my astonishment, they tried to use that tape recording of me saying 3 times. I said to them in this meeting, I said, you must protect the public. No matter what we do, we must protect the public. So your actions are not in the public's best interest, and you're writing me up for things you won't tell me. So I knew by saying you must protect the public, it was making the city attorney visibly upset, because whether he knew it or not, that was a statement that protected me. Now, it takes time to get protection, but that's a basic. If you protect the public, you do your job as a public servant. They weren't doing their job. They were trying to hush me up. They basically sat there and they wanted to hear my complaints, but I'd already filed my complaints. I'd already given them all the information. So why were they having this meeting? Well, they were trying to tape record me and trap me. They didn't tell me about the meeting ahead of time. They just said, come on to the meeting, you wanted it. I had threatened to go to the State Attorney General's office 4 days before this meeting, so I knew they wanted to have this meeting. I figured they would resolve all these issues, because now I was threatening to go to a law enforcement official. Because these are law enforcement issues, and the state attorney didn't do it. Well, naive and ignorant that the city staff were at the time, they decided that they would use that meeting against me. And so what they ended up doing was to write me up again. And I didn't know what they said my attitude in that meeting was inappropriate, and so they write me up for the meeting that they created. It made no sense what they were doing. It was clear entrapment. Well, I had written to the city council. So I ended up after that meeting, I wrote to the city council, figuring, well, this is my last straw. I mean, obviously they're going to try to get rid of me, because I'm obviously not going to be quiet about all these issues I'm finding, these photographs that I found and documented, and they still didn't know I kept copies of because a lot of the photographs were taken with my own personal camera, because the city camera wasn't working, and we had the same exact camera. So they didn't know that I also had the records on my personal camera, which they let me use, so it was authorized. So the city council, I thought, well, surely someone on the city council would want to find out about these issues. And when I reported to the city council, and what upset me the most was when I found out about 2-3 weeks after we had met with the principal at that school, the Pali Christian school, when I found out through staff that no one was informed, no parent was informed. And then I went back to the school just to confirm what the staff was saying. I met with the principal and asked him, did you contact those parents? And he says, no, we couldn't find them. I said, well, wait a minute. We know that the kids were got contact because the state, when I filed a state complaint against the city about that incident, because they weren't going to report the spill. So as part of my public service duty, when I'm on staff, I was still working for the city, I filed a complaint to Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. Well, Andy Wilson came out the next day when he got that internet email complaint. The state was very concerned about the children getting their wastewater. Remember, we're talking about 2007 here. We went back in time a little bit here. But what issue was, what happened to the kids? This whole thing, now I found the water violation issues and the money transfers, things like that. But the children, the innocent children, why didn't they take care of the children? It just was confounding to me. I thought, I must be mistaken. They would never just ignore the children's exposure. They wouldn't. They just couldn't. They're public officials. They've been public officials for years. Well, I didn't understand what was going on. Well, evidently, they were gearing the acting public works director, Mr. Kramer, for being full-time city manager. Well, he wouldn't be full-time city manager if this came to light, if this spill and these children exposure, and he was directly responsible for the mismanagement of it. He would never become city manager. But the acting city mayor at the time, Les Byram, wanted him manager so bad that they were willing to close the books on this issue with the kids and basically get rid of the problem, which was me, because I wouldn't shut up. And I just was like, I was shocked for a whole week and a half. I didn't know what, I was in my desk just sitting there in a daze. Now, they had already restricted me to stay at my desk. They changed my job structure, so whether I was now scanning documents, instead of doing my audit, my policing of the system, which was they told me to do, which is protecting the system, they pulled me out of that protection mode and put me behind a desk and said, scan documents in the scanner and do things like that. Don't leave the office. Well, what I was unbeknownst to me, at the same time around December, old style treatment process. Well, that was an issue for years. It showed clearly that they weren't describing the facility as a government facility. They were kind of, the police report was kind of vague on what it was. And it was pretty clear to me and other staff members that there was a cover-up of the issue. Now,